Welcome to video 13 in my Intro to HTML web video series. This video I'm going to focus on something called figure and Figcaption. The figure is a special box that's going to contain any kind of content that's related to an article but doesn't really belong in a paragraph or something like that. It's going to be part that will be tangentially related to the article. It's still contained in the article, but it's not part of the text. Think of it as an aside. You can usually include things like images, charts and graphs, audio files, maybe a video clip, maybe even a little game or something like that will go in a figure. What you have on my browser right now is the page that we were working on in the last video, but I changed it a little bit. I added some content into the first article. It is a album review by a death metal band called Conan. The album is called Monos. It was released by Burning World in 2012, and the article is by a guy named Jim Kelly. It was released on April 12th, 2012, which is today. There's an image, which is a pretty awesome image of the record cover, and then we've got the text down here. We've got the title of the band, the title of the album, when it was released, by what label, and who wrote the article, and then 3 paragraphs that talk about that record. The part that I would say would be the figure would be the image, because this image is directly related to the content, but it's not part of that text. It's image that it would be content that's aside from but related to the topic. So let's figure out how to deal with that. So if we look at our code, we've got our header with an H1, we've got our nav, which contains a UL, a series of list items with links in them. The links, like I said before, are dead links. There's nothing in them. I didn't put any reference in there. Then we've got our article, which contains, in this case, the image, and a couple H2s, a couple H3s, some paragraphs. The article closes. Then I've got my other article down here with just some placeholder text and an H2, placeholder text in 3 paragraphs. Then I have a footer with some placeholder text in it. Scroll back up. Now, figure. So we wanted to put our image in a figure. Figure looks like this. Figure, and then we close figure. And we nest whatever content we want to be in that figure inside of the opening and closing figure tags. So figure opens, figure closes, and then I've got my image in there. If I save it, go back to the browser and refresh it, you don't really see much change. You did see it gets shoved over just a little bit. The figure has a little bit of margin on the left side. So if I go into this special thing in Chrome, if you right-click anywhere in the browser of Chrome, go to Inspect Element, it'll bring up this really cool thing called Element Inspector. And when I hover over the figure, you can see that on the left side it's got a little bit of margin. Now let's look at how Element Inspector works really quickly. You've got your code right here, and it's got a series of little arrows that can be expanded and contracted, so you can see what everything is. I can even see my CSS up here if I wanted to. Over on the right side, we've got the styles that are applied. So if I look at figure, figure has these styles applied. Display block, WebKit margin before 1em, WebKit margin after 1em, WebKit margin start 40 pixels, WebKit margin end 40 pixels. So it's just saying that this thing called WebKit is adding in some margins. If we look at this drop-down menu here, we look at something called metrics. It shows you our box model. Remember we talked about the box model the other day? Well, this is an example of the box model. I hover over this area. This is my content. It shows our padding. There's no padding. It shows our border. There's no border. And then it shows our margin. It's got 16 pixels on top, 40 on left and right, and 16 on the bottom. This is a pretty cool tool. This will help you to deconstruct people's websites, and it'll also help you to figure out what's going right or wrong with yours. We'll look more at this later. I'm going to do a video that will just be on Element Explorer. Now, different browsers have this. You can get an add-on for Firefox called Firebug. Internet Explorer finally added an Element Explorer. Opera has one. So there's this function on almost all web browsers. Now, there are so many other things that we can do with this, and I'm not going to go into all of this right now. But this is just a quick intro to the Element Explorer. Very, very cool tool. It allows us to see where the margins and paddings are. So as I was saying, the figure has some built-in margins. So I'm going to close that. Now, it didn't do much. It just added a little bit of a caption. What it did is it semantically called this thing a figure that tells the browser that it's some content that's directly related to the article, but aside from it. The figure can also have a caption. Nested inside of the figure and below our content, we can add something called Figcaption. Figcaption opens. Figcaption closes. And if we wanted to, we could put some sort of content in here. I'm going to put a paragraph in here. Oops. This image is the Killer album cover for the Monos album by Conan. Save it, refresh in the browser, and you'll see that caption comes up right down below here. Now I'm going to style this figure just a little bit and the figure caption. So I'll go up to my style rule. I'll make 2 style rules. Figure. Figcaption. I'm going to start by giving them background colors. Pretty standard stuff for what we seem to do around here. I'm not going to give a background color to Figcaption. I'll save it, refresh it in the browser. Oops. I didn't want that in there. Typo. Refresh in the browser, and wow, you see that this figure stretches all the way in all the usable space from one edge to the other. That's not really what I want to see. I want it to only, I want it to take up about 30% of the width, usable width of the browser or of its containing element. Okay? So I want it to get bigger and smaller depending on how big the containing element is. This is taking up way too much space. It's using up 100% usable space. So let's go down here. So if I want to change the width, 30%. Save it, refresh it. Now, I've got the figure taking up 30% of its containing element. Its containing element in this case is the article. So you'll see it's taking up almost a third of that article. But I still don't quite like this yet. I want to have a little bit of padding in the figure. I want to make sure that I've got no text content touching the edge of the box. I don't want the image to touch the edge of the box. In fact, I want that image to kind of float right in the middle. So what I'm going to do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to make sure that the image takes up 100% the width of its containing element. The image takes up 100% the width of the figure. I could do this, image width 100%, and that'll work. Hey, great, it takes up the entire width of my figure. But the problem with this is, later on, I might have other images in the web page that I don't want to be 100%. I want them to be different percentages. So I need to go back to that idea of descendant selection. I'm going to select only the images which exist within figure. Figure, space image, save it, refresh it, and it does the same thing. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tiny bit of padding. I'm going to start with 3% padding. That'll be 3% the width of my figure. Save it, refresh it, and see how it looks. That's a bit much, isn't it? That's a bit wide. So maybe I'll go down to about half of that, 1.5%. Save it, refresh it. That feels a little bit better. So now my figure is 30% the width of the browser. My image takes up all usable space in the width of the figure. The caption is right below it, and it looks kind of nice. So that's our figure and Figcaption.